At this stage, I'd like to, prior to introducing our speaker this evening, I'd like to hand it over to Ruth Ahern, our Assistant Director General, who will do the land acknowledgement prior to starting.
Thank you, Stuart. The Western Quebec School Board acknowledges that the lands upon which we live, learn, and work are the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe peoples. We thank them for sharing these lands and commit as an organization, as educators, and as individuals to an ongoing relationship that recognizes and respects the lands, traditions, and culture of the Anishinaabe people. Miigwech.
Thank you, Ms. Ahern. Okay, now to introduce our speaker this evening, Sheridon Baptiste, and his title of his speech this evening is Anti-Racism. Let's do our part, one kind act at a time. A little bit of background on Sheridon. He attended Queen's University in Kingston in the late 1980s. He's a member of the Track and Field Hall of Fame. He's a three-time Olympian in bobsleigh in 1992, 1994, and 1998, and a member of the Canada National Track Team for many years. Presently, he's the Healthy Living Coordinator at the Odawa Native Friendship Centre here in Ottawa. So again, we'd like to introduce and welcome Sheridon Baptiste, Anti-Racism, Let's Do Our Part, one kind act at a time. Prior to handing it over to Sheridon, we will have a question and answers at the end of the session, so that if you have any questions that you would like to ask Sheridon, we'll take it at that time. So over to Sheridon. Welcome everyone to our evening speech series. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aiken. I'd like to also thank Drew Wapachi McDougall, who first approached me about this. And I must admit, when she first approached me, my first thought was, I could come up with a million reasons why I possibly can't do this. And I mean, it's such a heavy undertaking with such a divisive subject. But I just thought to myself, we all have something to share on this topic. And in so doing, the underlying theme behind most of all of this is the major aspect of all that is about talking and sharing our experiences, be them positive or negative. Because in sharing our experiences, we begin to see each other as fellow human beings, wanting the same things for ourselves and our families. As mentioned, I was an athlete, and as a result, I traveled all over the world. The one thing I noticed in every country I visited was all people wanted to do was provide honestly for themselves and their families in a fair and equitable manner. The kids, I always noticed the kids, they simply wanted to run around, play, and laugh and be happy. But we made things so complicated because of race. The anthropologist Ashley Montague argued that race is a human invention, a social construct, not a biological one. It's very difficult to argue with her on that point. We're all human beings. Race has evidently made things very complex. There are a couple of books I would like to urge you to take a look at. The first is by author and historian Ibram Kendi, entitled How to Be an Anti-Racist. Like everything we consume and everything that we look at, it's up to you to decide exactly how you want to view his views and how you want to adapt his views into your being. I see it as just a great launching point in terms of understanding the anti-racist and the racist. The second is by Pulitzer Prize winning author Isabel Wilkerson, called Caste. And I'd like to thank my brother for putting me onto her. It's really an interesting read. I haven't had a chance to finish the entire thing, but it's a really interesting book. I'm going to make references to these books mixed in with some of my life experiences. First, I want to look at Mr. Kendi's notion of how do we define these terms, non-racist and anti-racist. If I had $1 for the number of times people had said to me, I'm not a racist, but I would be a rich man. The vast majority of people are non-racist. They don't belong to a clan, they don't burn crosses on your lawn or wear cowardly hoods. They are pretty much Switzerland, totally neutral, no need for action. They're very much happy with the status quo. Their life and their families are good, no worries. For them, it's like saying, I'm not against Christ. He's cool, but I'm not going to stick my neck out for him either. Not if it's going to put my nice situation in danger. I like being comfortable. And who doesn't? Then there's the anti-racist, which requires courage, sacrifice. It requires one to re-examine oneself without fear of admitting wrongdoing. It's difficult to admit, yes, that was a racist thought, or yes, those were racist words. Examples of those scenarios are endless for those in marginalized communities. I'll share a couple personal incidents with you. But first, let me say, Queens was a great university. 99.9% of the people are awesome. But in every situation, you're going to find a bad apple here or there. So while I was at Queens, the N-word was used on me a couple times, which honestly wasn't something I should have been surprised about. Even in so-called educated settings, not everyone is so educated. A football teammate used it in front of many players on my team while in the cafeteria lineup. I was more shocked than anything, and I believe those around me were shocked as well. To this day, I'm still unsure as to how I should have reacted. A few punches certainly would have been justifiable, but I walked away instead. My non-racist teammates around me did and said nothing. An anti-racist would not have let it slide without some action. Sadly, days later, the same fellow that used the N-word on me was trying to convince me that he was not a racist. I mean, I just laughed. I mean, what can you do? Incident 2, while in a church, someone came up to me and said this, "You work with the indigenous community, correct?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Why do they keep fighting for land rights and whatnot? They don't pay taxes, and the government gives them tens of millions of dollars each year. They lost a fight hundreds of years ago. I didn't have anything to do with all of that. This is crazy. It's our land now. They lost." Was he being racist? Absolutely. Now, I had to set him in line a little bit, and this was my response to him. I said, indigenous peoples were enslaved, just like mine. They were lucky to not be entirely wiped off the face of the earth by the Europeans, and were luckier still to have a few words of promises written down on a few pieces of papers, as we know them, treaties. With the abuses and the tearing apart of generations of families because of residential schools, murdered and missing indigenous women, blatant racism, ridiculous conditions on reservations, and just crazy high suicide rates, I said to him, it's safe to say that they've endured. I wouldn't give up on any of those promises that were made and not fulfilled. Would you? And needless to say, he just walked away. History was one of my favorite subjects all throughout my schooling, from grade school to university. In order to comprehend racism, we cannot ignore history. The first Africans were brought to the Virginian colony in the summer of 1619 and were freed theoretically in 1865 at the end of the Civil War. That's 446 years. Generations to establish a caste system. designed to keep those non-European descendants in their place. Do you guys realize that at one point in American history, the dollar value of all the slaves was greater than that of all industry and the railroads combined in the US? You see, slaves were used as collateral by plantation owners to secure loans with banks throughout the US and Europe. Pause and think about that for a second. Slaves were worth more than factories, industries, and the railroad combined. It makes me, well, I can't even say how it makes me feel. Just sick inside, to be quite honest. America was built figuratively and literally on the backs of slaves. Because of track and field, I lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana for extended periods of time. I went there to train for track and field, obviously. It was home base to my teammates, and I like to do a quick hi to some of them right now. I like to say hi to Glenroy, known as G-Man, Donovan, Mr. Bailey himself, Leslie, our lone female compatriot, Everton, who gave it his best shot, Lotfi, my Algerian friend, whom I share many nights of roti and curry with that I got from my mom, and who am I forgetting? Oh, Ricardo, of course, Hollywood. Ricardo is the only athlete I've known in my entire existence who has never been hurt. To this day, I can't comprehend that. Never once has he been hurt. We all performed tremendously well during our time at LSU. While there, I did my informal surveys. I like doing those all the time. I wanted to know, why didn't people always get along here? Why the constant underlying current of segregation? You can always feel it, for me anyway. Maybe the other guys didn't feel that way, but you can always feel it, the separateness in the air. Sure, we hung out, but there were boundaries from both the white and black sides. I came to realize the answer was actually quite simple. It was history. The caste system developed during slavery. There was an unspoken hierarchy, and we all know where blacks were put on that totem pole. His great-great-great-great-grandfather owned my great-great-great-great-grandfather at one time. It will take possibly generations to get over that. I had people say that to me, the outsider from Canada, many times. Not only were we owned, but upon release, nothing was given to us. That divide still exists today, in that the median wealth for a middle-class white person is 10 times higher than that of a black person in America. What's even crazier is that gap is widening, not closing. I'm gonna share this story with you guys, not only because it's funny, but it speaks to ignorance, which is arguably one of the main causes of racism. While in the Rouge, that's what we called it, the Rouge, I happened to go to a Burger King, and the girl behind the counter greets me, and I place my order, and she says to me, I'm gonna attempt at my best Southern accent. It's probably gonna be terrible, but I'll try. I apologize. She says to me, y'all not from around here, all right? And I said, I looked around. I was like, yeah, it's just me. Yeah, I'm not from around here. I'm actually from Canada. And she looked at me, and she said, Canada, where that at? I'm like, seriously? I said, well, just get on I-95, keep driving north, and eventually you'll run into it. And I guess it clicked in. Oh, Canada, Canada. But then she looked at me again, and she's looking up and down at me, and she's like, Canada? There are no white people in black people in Canada? I go, oh man, this is unbelievable. And it was funny. It was very funny, but sad at the same time. Ignorance and propaganda causes problems such as these. In the mid-'80s and early '90s, when gangster rap gained prominence, young black and brown men took a real hit via the media and politicians. It was tough enough before that, But now we were all seen as thugs, violent, lazy, jobless, uneducated, too many kids out of wedlock, sex crazed animals, and the list goes on and on. Trust me, all Black and brown people, especially males, felt the repercussions from this ambush, this Black male bashing. We were tried and convicted in the media and in congressional halls, all painted with the same brush without being even having a fair trial. Here's a clear example of what that propaganda machine can do to the average person, even in Canada. Imagine this. And this happened on more than one occasion. While at university, as dusk was approaching, I'm walking down the street. It was actually Earl Street for those that are from the area. A lone female would see me in the distance and would deliberately cross to the other side of the street. Yes, it was obvious. It was more than obvious to avoid contact with me. They were afraid of me. Why? Because of what they heard on TV? Because of what they feared? Not because of what they knew. I'm not usually the kind of person who allows what people think to get the better of me. But at first I was angry. Then I was profoundly sad. Sad that both these women, remember this happened a couple times, were probably decent, non-racist individuals. Who knows? They may have even been anti-racist, but obviously not at that moment in time. I prefer to give people the benefit of the doubt. From that moment forward, I made the first move. If a female was approaching me late at night by herself, I quickly crossed the street instead. The propaganda machine got me as a Black man as well. Before joining Odawa, I had little or no contact really with the Indigenous community. All I knew was what the Lone Ranger and Gunsmoke and Bonanza told me about them. They were always stoic and serious, and you couldn't trust them. And white man spoke with forked tongue, that kind of nonsense. But I'm here to tell you now, and I'm sure you all know it's true, that that's all nonsense. They're here trying to navigate this crazy world just like the rest of us. They're ridiculously funny, loyal, intelligent, and they love life. I can't seem to get enough of them into my weight room to work out though. But that goes for all of us, not just them. Looking back on those days, I'm pretty angry at my young self. I could have been and done better. I'm ashamed to admit that I subconsciously fed into that anti-Black male propaganda machine nonsense. I felt I had to show them that I'm different. It's odd. I had no desire to be them. I was and am still very happy with who I am. I simply didn't want to be what they thought I was. Obviously, I wasn't, but I still felt the need to prove to the world. After this talk, I'll probably have to go see your shrink to work all this stuff out. One of my favorite sayings is by Nietzsche. At least I think it's him. Someone will have to verify that for me. And the saying is, equality does not require sameness. Equality does not require sameness. I think that stems back into the feeling that I'm happy with who I am, but that caste system, man, it wants to keep us down by especially having us think that we're not worthy. The system wants marginalized communities to know and keep their place here, really low, instead of up here. Wouldn't it be awesome to be living in a world where that job or promotion you didn't get had nothing to do with your race, where you're judged solely on your abilities and intelligence? Take a look at the pinnacle of business, okay? The Fortune 500 companies. Would you believe that none have a single Black senior executive, including Exxon Mobil, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Apple, or Microsoft? Facebook and Google each have one. And Amazon added one, its first in 2020. We need changes that will move the needle. What will make it, things that will make a difference. The complexions of our companies should be, in theory, resembling the complexion of its society. We're not even a tenth of the way there. But wouldn't it be awesome if we were actually good, if we could actually reach that pinnacle? Yes, it would be nice to have a clear definition of racism and anti-racism that is ingrained in our consciousness and hearts. But wouldn't it be even better if changes could be made in our systems, rules, and our policies? For example, when you go to the next voting station on election day, know your candidates. Ask yourself, do you share the same values? Do you have the same goals for your respective families? Do businesses you support share or value your standards? If no, don't waste your money at those establishments. You have a voice. When used collectively, it matters. The hardest one for most people is to talk to their kids about racism. It's a tough one to tackle, no question. I can say though that ignoring it doesn't help. My mom's not gonna like this example, but an example that I think of, the last thing my mother wanted to do was to talk to me and my brothers about sex. And one day I woke up and there was a book on my dresser entitled, All a Young Man Needs to Know About Sex. I hate to admit it, I never read the book, but my point being, you have to engage in dialogue. You have to talk. That's the only way that things can change. I'm only theorizing here, but let's say every white person knows at least one person from the franchise group. They don't interact with them on a daily basis, but they know them well enough to say hi and chat for a while. Would this be enough to really know a person? Probably not. I know a few Muslim people. Some I would say, yes, he is or she is a friend, but do I truly know them? Probably not. My point being is we need to spend time with each other. We need to break bread together. Start with your neighbors. Here's a for instance. This winter, because of the pandemic, my neighbors and I decided to maintain a rink for the kids in our area. It instantly became the hub of the neighborhood. We cleared it as a team. We watered it as a team. We drilled holes in the ice. I live on the river, so we actually had the rink on the river. So we drilled holes into the ice, and we used a pump system, and we were able to water the ice together. My point is, we did all of this as a team. There wasn't a day that went by that the rink wasn't used. We discovered folks in the hood with, bad cooking skills or mean cooking skills. One played in the AHL and on the original Ottawa 67s team. We met recent immigrants from the Ukraine, folks with gadget skills out of this world. My point is, we got to know each other. I've lived in this neighborhood for over 11 years. I know everyone well enough to, wave and say, hi, how you doing? I would have said I knew them, and they probably would say the same thing if a stranger were to ask. Yes, they know me. But in years past, those same neighbors would see me downtown in the street, but wouldn't have a clue who I was because I wasn't standing in front of my house or driving away in that familiar car. They didn't. I mean, I would say, hey, how you doing, so and so, and they look at me like I'm crazy. Who's this black guy talking to me? You know what I mean? But this rink changed all that. We spent time getting to know one another. We broke bread, or well, rather cookies together for the past 3 months. Things have changed for the better, and there's no arguing that fact. I've been rambling on, but haven't even touched on the primary reason all this dialogue is taking place. George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter campaign. I honestly teared up just thinking about it. 8 seconds. I mean, I'm choking up now. You know, it's unthinkable, unbelievable. But that's been going on for a long time. You know, the US now knows about it. Canada knows about it. The rest of the world knows about it. The conversations will and must go on. His and countless other killings will never be forgotten. We need to bring the humane back into humanity. I've had neighbors ask me about my personal experiences with the police because of Mr. Floyd. And to my surprise, they were surprised as to how much I've had to deal with the police. I guess they figured, Sheridon, he's a nice guy. He's a law-abiding citizen. He's probably had zero contact with the law. He doesn't know anything. Well, I can honestly tell you, and this is another one of my personal surveys, at least 90 to 98% of my personal Black friends have had to answer to the police in some way or the other, in some form. They have had contact with them. We all have stories. That cannot be a coincidence. I'm personally, I'm in the double digits, believe it or not. That is, if you include DWB. Now, I know a lot of you are wondering, DWB, I thought it was DWI. It's like, no, my Black friends know what that means. DWB, driving while Black. And basically what that means is we got pulled over a lot. And I did. There are many, many stories. Even in Europe, I mean, I spent 3 hours in jail in Monaco once for just ridiculousness. I'll share a couple quick stories with you guys. I'll make it really quick because I know I'm going over my time. I'll hurry this along. Here's one. My brother, when he was probably 12, 13 years old, he took my bike to the gas station to put air in the tires. Because he's riding with his bike and he has my bike and he's towing it. The police pulls him over, confiscates his bikes. My mom had to go down to the police station to get the bikes back. They wouldn't even listen to reason. They figured he stole it. I have a million of them. When I was a kid, I'm shoveling snow in my neighborhood. The snow had fallen. I used that to just earn a little extra money. So I'm shoveling a neighbor's driveway. Cop pulls up. Woo, woo, woo. Hey, what are you doing? Well, I'm shoveling snow. What do you think I'm doing? You shouldn't be here. Well, this man says I can shovel his driveway and he's going to pay me money. Just really silly, ridiculous things like that. The main one that I wanted to share with you guys, my most recent one, is I have a family member that did get into some trouble with the law. And my wife and I, Andrea, we are his sureties. So we were responsible for him. And so he leaned on us a lot for support. One day he comes to my workplace and we're standing outside, and I guess he was having a particularly hard day, and he's talking to me. And I usually just talk to him, calm him down, help out a little bit. And while we're talking, he says, Sheridon, look over my left shoulder. Those are policemen that are surveilling me. They're keeping an eye on me. I'm like, dude, you're crazy. Why are you so paranoid? That's crazy. Why would they possibly be doing something like that? Anyway, we thought nothing of it. We continued our conversation, and we were out there for quite a while, at least a good 45 minutes. And we were standing beside my car. The reason I'm referencing my car is because they must have gotten my license plate number from my car. So that evening I'm driving home, and I noticed coming around one of my streets, there's a police car there. Usually they're not around, but it's like, oh, whatever, it's a police car. I'm just gonna make sure I obey all the laws. So I made sure I did a dead stop at the stoplight, turn left, turn right, whatever, dead stop again. Then I turned onto my street. Woo, 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 the lights go on. And they pulled me over and I said, "Oh, did I do something wrong, officer?" And they're like, "Ah, yeah, you just rolled through that stop sign." It's like, I know I didn't because I know I didn't. So they took my license registration, they took it back to their cruiser, came back to me, and then said, "Oh, everything's fine. Now you can go." And I just leaned out my window and I just said, "Look, guys, the person you're surveilling, I'm his surety. You can tell your supervisor you don't need to be pulling me over every time I come into my own neighborhood." And I just rolled down my window and I left. Now, at that same time, that's when they were talking about the carding laws, and they won't card people anymore. And that was a blatant violation of those laws. And these are the kind of things that minorities have to put up with. Now, I'm only here sharing because I want people to know that yes, racism exists. If you're a minority, yes, you may work harder and not reap the same rewards, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't work hard and make sound decisions, honorable choices for us and our families. Faisal once said, he's a sociologist, just because change happens slowly doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I personally don't believe everyone is looking for handouts or charity. We simply want equal chances, which does not require sameness. One of my favorite gospel groups is the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir. And in one of the songs they sing, the lyrics says, "It doesn't matter," what is it? Yeah, "it does not matter what color you are, as long as your blood is red." Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sheridan. We have if just at this stage, if people would have any questions they would like to add to the chat. We do have a question, Sheridan, for you. Where did you go to high school? And what did you learn about Black history during your history courses in school?
I went to Laurentian High School. It's no longer there; it's shut down. And I also went to three high schools. I went to Sir John A. Macdonald High School, and that's also closed down. That's now St. Paul's, I believe. And I went to Laurentian High School, but that's now a Walmart. And I also went to a school called Kingsway College in Oshawa, Ontario. You know, the history, history is pretty much who writes it. It is what it is. I know throughout all of my high school years, I had zero Black content and zero Aboriginal content. So it's good I think that's changing. I hope that's changing. And I hope that people need something, they need someone, they need to identify. They need to identify with others. And when you're denied that, it's very difficult.
Right. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you, Sheridan, for your enlightening speech this evening. And a couple of things that resonate on me during your speech was that racism is a human construct, which was I hear this a lot in respects to, more of our information that we're hearing more about racism and anti-discrimination. And I guess the more important statement that you made this evening that at least resonates with me is that equality does not equate sameness. And that to me hits home about how perhaps people were educated in the 1980s and 1990s about racism, is that it's not necessarily, equality is not necessarily sameness. So that was very important for me to hear. As for people within the chat, if there's anything else you would like to share with us this evening, I would like to give you an opportunity. If not, First of all, what I'm hearing is a distinction between non-racist and anti-racist is what we help us to change society. Is a statement that just came from someone this evening. So thank you so much, Sheridon, this evening. We really appreciate that you gave us some time this evening from your busy schedule. And I'd like to welcome everyone to a wonderful evening, and take care, and looking forward to, of course, a wonderful evening this evening. Take care, everyone.
Absolutely. Good night.